This is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. When was the last time you had to speak to a company's customer service over the phone? Did it sound a bit robotic? Maybe it asked you to tell them in a few words, what are you calling about? Customer service seems to increasingly be handled by AI chatbots, which can bombard us with unrelated questions. It can fail to understand what we're saying, and it really just wears us down as we try to get a hold of a human being, human, person, agent, please, who can actually solve our problems, or so we hope. It turns out those chatbots can come with security issues for the companies that use them and the people who reach out to them. Take Sears, the once thriving department store chain. Even after a major decline that led to a bankruptcy filing in 2022, it's still a going concern. There are 5 stores across the U.S. None of them are in Illinois, but the headquarters still is. Sears also still has a home services business, which provides appliance repairs, and that, for customer service, relies on AI and virtual assistants. We know this in part because the company left a database of millions of interactions people had with its bots accessible to the public. That database included chat logs and audio recordings, some of which go on for hours. The man who discovered those files is cybersecurity researcher Jeremiah Fowler. He joins me now from Krakow, Poland, as we talk about the role chatbots play in customer service and the problems people have with them. Jeremiah, welcome to the 21st show. Thanks for being with us.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be with you today.
Also with us is Andy John. He's an assistant professor of marketing at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, and he researches chatbots as part of his work. Andy, welcome to you as well. And listeners, you can join the conversation for the rest of the hour by giving us a call at 800-222-9455. Maybe you've had to deal with a customer service chatbot. What was your experience like? And how do you feel about the possibility of these chatbots fully replacing human workers in customer service altogether? The number again is 800-222-9455. That's 800-222-9455. All right, Andy, John, I'm going to start with you. Talk about the uptake of these customer service chatbots in the past few years. How are we seeing companies use them? Andy, are you with us? All right, it seems we may be having some connection issues with Andy John. So, Jeremiah, let me come to you. What do you understand about why corporations like this technology?
I think at the end of the day, they're saving money. You don't have to pay a chatbot. It's kind of a one-time investment and then minor upkeep. So I think at the end of the day, that's it. It's a revenue-based decision, no matter how convenient or inconvenient it is for the actual end user.
Yeah, talk about where privacy risks come into this.
As a cybersecurity researcher, I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I've seen an explosion in data breaches involving artificial intelligence, because we all think that AI is just this magic. You give it information and it goes off in the cloud somewhere, but that data has to be stored somewhere. And if the storage of that data is not secure, it's a huge privacy and security risk.
Talk about how these programs work. And, as I sometimes say, maybe explain it to me like I'm a smart teenager.
So many of them work different ways. Some of them can be very complex and use generative AI, or they can use if this, then that system. So for example, if the customer says, I need help. Okay, what do you need help about? And then there's kind of a script that it can follow.
So I guess this is where if you say the word hours, then it'll direct you to a message that has the store hours. And if you say, agent or something, maybe it connects you with a human, I guess. That's the if this, then that sort of system.
Yeah, well, these days getting connected with a human seems more and more difficult. But yeah, that's correct, to look at it that way. They're basically prompted scripts that when the customer or the user requests a certain feature or information, then that script is automatically generated, whether by text in a chatbot or a virtual assistant, an audio.
All right, so I think we have Andy John with us. Apologies for the technical difficulties there. Talk about the uptake of these customer service chatbots in the past few years. Why are we seeing companies increasingly adopting these?
So again, I mean, it already been said, but companies try to replace human labor with a chatbot because chatbot is much faster and much more efficient and definitely much cheaper than hiring human labor. And also in terms of well-being of the human labor, I mean, usually when live agents are dealing with difficult customer, they're emotionally exhausted. So there are a lot of well issue regarding well-being of the human labor, working in the call center or, working as a live agent. So there are a lot of issues as well. So companies just turn to, chatbot that can, easily solve those issues.
That's interesting. The labor side of it is sort of being. I actually knew somebody who was a medical professional in a town that had a big AT&T
Mm-hmm.
call center back in the day, and said that a lot of the patients from the AT&T place,
Yes.
not giving any identifying details, but they were pretty
Mm-hmm.
depressed. It was a really tough
Mm-hmm.
job.
Exactly. I mean, I think anyone has some experience of being like frustrated or even angry about the product or a brand. So they just like to talk to the agent, just to get it out and then just
To
talk
vent.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We need to take a break on the program. Your call is very important to us, but we're going to pick it up after this. You're listening to the 21st show. We're talking about chatbots. Stay with us. I don't even want to think about how much of my life I've spent listening to this song, the Cisco standard, the Cisco phone system standard hold music. It's the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey. We're talking about AI chatbots and customer service. Corporations seem to love them. Customers, not so much. We asked about this in our listener texting group, which you can join by sending the word TALK to 217-803-0730. Janice in Crawford County told us, I don't mind using chatbots, and they do oftentimes help and can solve a request or problem. If and when I get frustrated, I just tell the chatbot and ask to speak to a human customer service representative. Only once have I been referred to another chatbot. Terry in Batavia said, I don't know which is worse, an offshore customer service rep with an accent who's having as much trouble understanding me as I'm having understanding him or her, or an AI chatbot that understands nothing. But Jay in Elburn said simply, I deal with a 21st show bot several times a week. All right, thanks for those messages. Jay, I promise you, we have real human people who read every text message who comes in. We're talking about people's experiences with chatbots as well as a leak that left millions of conversations people had with Sears chatbots accessible on the open web. My guests are Jeremiah Fowler, who discovered the Sears leak, and Andy John, a professor of marketing at Northern Illinois University, whose work includes researching chatbots. You can join us live at 800-222-9455. All right, Jeremiah, say more than I did in the introduction about what was in those Sears files, broadly speaking.
Sure, yeah, and I'll expand a little bit. So I'm a cybersecurity researcher with around 15 years experience. I work with Black Hills Information Security. And right now I'm speaking to you from Krakow, Poland in the Anti-Siphon Research Center. And one of the things we do is figure out how data is exposed and how to protect it. In this particular incident, there were three separate databases with 3.7 million records. Those included chat logs, transcripts, audio recordings, and these were from 2024 to 2026, and it was completely accessible without a password to anyone with an internet connection and knew where to look.
Some of these included audio files that went on for hours, even after the service part of the calls was done. Talk about that.
Yeah, so a lot of times we've all had these automated calls where it's like, thank you for calling, goodbye. And you just assume that that's the end of the call. A lot of older people that don't look at their phone every 30 seconds for social media, they're just like, okay, the call's done. You've set it down and it records everything. And not only does it record, but it also created a plain text transcript that could be used. It's searchable, it's indexable. So huge privacy risk there. In addition to that, from the potential of fraud or scams, when you're giving someone your personally identifiable information and insider knowledge. So for example, I know what you have, what item you want repaired and the date you want it repaired. Now, if I took that and I called you and I said, "Hey, I'm calling from Sears Home Services. I see you have a Kenmore dryer. Give me your credit card number." The chances of that increase exponentially because who else knows that information?
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the other things you also found in the report is a lot of frustration directed at the chatbots. Talk about that.
A lot is probably putting it mildly. You know, so yeah, some of them went on with just, people out of frustration testing the chatbot, asking questions that were irrelevant to the chat. In a time of frustration, a lot of times a human really can help you. It makes the difference between satisfying the customer and just tying them up or passing them on the next link of the chain. But yeah, I saw some very, very disgruntled chats that I cannot repeat many of the words on air.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Andy, Jean, what is it that makes people frustrated with these chatbots?
Yeah, most of the time, I mean, if we are thinking about the old-fashioned, chatbot that is almost like an answering machine, then humans, I mean, the customer think that this old-fashioned answering machine like a chatbot cannot handle complicated issue. For example, we can ask simple question, we can ask chatbot simple question, but if we, make the question complicated, then, chatbot is most likely cannot fully answer the question. And then they want to, talk to, live agent for that reason. And, thinking about customer being frustrated, we need to, think about, human psychologists. So why, given we have like a more advanced chatbot, like a ChatGPT that, many people are using, they really like, talking like a human, and then, their thinking capacity is beyond our imagination. It's so good. But even so, why even, chatbot is, good at handling customer issue? Why do customers still want to talk to a live agent? Especially when they're frustrated, just customer just do want get some kind of psychological comfort from just simply talking with a live agent. I mean, yeah, we can get some kind of, emotional connection with a machine, but it's just a machine. So we just want to talk to another human being to just feel relief from what the customers are experiencing.
We actually got a text message on this very point. Sonia in Decatur says, the more technology evolves, the more humans are non-existent. I prefer to speak to a human. The only thing good about AI would be for very rude people. The bot won't take offense. I'm old. I like interacting with people. I like interactive situations, not sterile ones. Thanks for that message, Sonia. Andy, I want to come back to her point on rudeness. Does any of the behavior we see have to do with people treating a chatbot differently, feeling like they can get away with something that they maybe wouldn't do with a human?
Yeah. So, there are a lot of research, actually discussing about this. So when you believe that you are talking with the, machine, then you unconsciously believe that that your interaction will be just ending up with that machine. It's not going to be seen by human beings. So you're kind of exposing your inner anger more brutally than when you are interacting with another social being. Because when you are interacting with other, people, then you consider others' emotion. But when you are interacting with a machine, you don't consider emotion of a machine typically because machine doesn't have emotion. So for that reason, humans are kind of exposing their inner anger or frustration when they are talking with the, chatbot.
Jeremiah, I want to come back to this Sears leak. What are some of the reasons files like this might end up on the open internet?
There are a range of reasons. It could be just a firewall misconfiguration. It could have been an update. It could have been migration to a new system. I don't believe these were exposed for a long period of time, and the reason for that is just because, the bad guys are also looking to ransomware databases like this for profit. So that's more than likely how it happened, but it's a learning experience for creators of chatbots and organizations that use chatbots, um, just to understand that yes, you collect that data and you store that data, but how is it stored and how is it protected?
Is this, I mean, to what extent do you have a sense that this is partly because Sears is this, declining corporation that's struggled and is like a shell of its former self? Should people feel more secure about, more established companies or, ChatGPT, that sort of thing? Or is this a lesson for us all to just, because I don't know how you get around this problem, right? If a company wants you, if the only way to interact with them is through one of these chatbots, what do you do?
Well, I think Sears has the right idea. This is a legacy brand that's been around, 140 years. So it makes sense for them to come into the digital age. And the fact that they're embracing technology, I would say would be an asset in the long run for their business and for their customers. So, I would look at it that way as opposed to, being a con as opposed to a pro. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that the data you collect is that of real people, and it's equally as valuable as the products or services you provide.
What do you do when you discover a breach like this?
First thing I do is try to find out what's there, how sensitive it is, and then validate who owns that data, and then I do a responsible disclosure notice. In this case, I reported it to them. They closed it within the same day, within a matter of hours. So they were very responsive with it. And that's important as well when it comes to making sure that it's not exposed any longer than it needs to be.
And you do that, I presume, before publishing that you found it to the wide world, and it's written up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
wired and that
absolutely.
sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. All right, Andy, Jean, beyond even privacy,
Mhm.
let's talk about what can make a chatbot a liability for a company. And I'm thinking of a particular case in Canada involving an airline chat.
Mhm. So first of all, I mean, for example, when you want to build a chatbot or deploy chatbot, it can cost like $300 per month, or when you want to build your own chatbot, you can cost like $10,000 or more. But you also need to be prepared to invest the budget in maintenance of the chatbot, in terms maintenance in terms of security, safety, and protecting data privacy. So it's just not just building a chatbot. Using chatbot is also about the good maintenance of the chatbot. So that's what the company needs to think about. And also, I mean, chatbot. Many people think of chatbot as just answering machine, but just think about it. If you go to some e-commerce website, and the first thing that is greeting you is a chatbot, right? That means that chatbot can play a role as a even brand ambassador, meaning that the good impression coming from chatbot can actually carries over to your evaluation of the product and even purchase decision. So chatbot, again, we need to think differently about chatbot than before, because chatbot has a lot of role in building customer trust and shaping brand attitude.
Interesting. All right, Jeremiah, let's end with like maybe a practical note, right? How much of this is something customers can do something about, can control, as opposed to this being on the companies that employ this technology in terms of securing your information in a case like this?
Unfortunately, the customers have very little control over this. The only time that it falls to the customer is once a data incident happens, just making sure that you know what to do to not be a victim of fraud using stolen information. And that would be, always question suspicious information requests. Only communicate through authorized or legitimate channels, and double check if you are suspicious that someone is not who they say they are. You have to be proactive these days, and unfortunately, consumers don't have control of their data. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Jeremiah Fowler is a cybersecurity researcher, joined us today from Poland. Good evening. Thank you for being with us. And Andy Jean is Assistant Professor of Marketing at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb. Jeremiah, Andy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all the time we have for our program today. Coming up tomorrow on the 21st show, there was a flood of super PAC money into Illinois. Much of it misleading. It came from groups like crypto, promoting cryptocurrency, sports betting, and also APAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Council. And it was a factor in this year's elections, although not always the way the people spending the money intended. We're going to take a deep dive into that tomorrow. Plus, with the weather getting warmer again, it's time to consider your spring and summer travel plans. We'll talk about popular destinations in Illinois, nationally and internationally, with traveling content creators Jay and Himani Patel. Before we go, I want to urge you to join our texting group. You heard messages throughout the show today. We love sharing your comments and questions with our guests. You can join by sending the word TALK to 217-803-0730. Again, text the word TALK to 217-803-0730. You can find that, how to join our texting group, plus our email address, voicemail line, every other way to get in touch. It's all at our website, 21stshow.org. You can find our past programs there and links to subscribe to our podcasts, or look us up on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. The 21st Show is a production of Illinois Public Media. I'm Brian Mackey. Thank you for listening. We will talk with you again tomorrow.